Christmas present, a topical Christmas story. It's that time of year when children agonise over their present list. The lucky ones get to visit Santa's grotto to tell him in person what they want for Christmas. Our party leaders have been especially keen to meet Santa this year with the general election coming up, but their conversations have not gone quite as they hoped. When Santa came to Westminster, he was in an argumentative mood, and I've obtained a transcript of what was said for greater accuracy. First to arrive was Nicola Sturgeon. She thought Christmas was going to be early this year, so she did not want to miss out on her big ask. As so often, the person who had the furthest to travel got there before the star. When Santa saw her, she said, "What I would like for Christmas is an increased SNP membership, clear leadership in the Scottish polls, and the certainty that we can win all the seats in Scotland in the general election. That's all I want for Christmas." It's not asking a lot, as I do lead the only party that has Scottish in its name, and the only party which really cares about my country. We need this to stop all those English MPs going back on their word over Home Rule. Santa looked cross and replied, "Last year I gave you the wonderful present you've been asking for ages, a referendum on Scottish independence. You didn't look after that present and managed to lose the vote. What you are now proposing is I should give you effectively the same present again this year in the hope that you would look after it better. If I grant your wish, all your SNP MPs will claim they now have every right to independence because they have just won a general election campaign seeking to get out. I have to ask you to think again and try and find a present which you would like, which matches with the settled will of the Scottish people to stay within the Union." Next to arrive, fresh from a pub in Thanet, was Nigel Farage. He decided to be moderate in his requests, in the hope that Santa would look kindly on him. As he spoke, however, the significance of the moment and the opportunity started to overtake him. "Hi there, Santa. You're doing a great job. I don't want to make your life too difficult. So all I want for Christmas is momentum going into the general election. You know the sort of thing. A few good opinion polls, the odd Tory defection. You see, I reckon I need just 30 seats in the Commons to make me the third largest party. Then I can decide who the Prime Minister should be, then I could make him hold a referendum, then get us out of the EU, and then we can close our borders, and then everyone will be so grateful to UKIP and we will be on a roll." Santa was dumbfounded by the gap between the ambition and the current polls and parliamentary forces of Mr. Farage. So he said in a friendly but slightly patronising way, "Well, Mr. Farage, last year I gave you exactly that same present. You had 2 good defections, some good opinion polls, and you came first in the European elections, which I thought were your best opportunity to make your point. What have you and your colleagues managed to do for the UK now you are the largest UK party at Brussels? What single law have you stopped, or EU expenditure have you cancelled? What progress have you made on changing the UK's border arrangements? If I granted your wish, how do I know that you would be any part of a new government and that you could carry out any of the things you promise? I think you need to choose a more suitable present that is not the same as last year's." By now, the Deputy Prime Minister was getting very angry because he was having to wait outside while Santa talked to Mr. Farage. It seemed to be rubbing salt in the wounds of those Clegg-Farage debates, which some had dared say Mr. Farage had won. His weight came on top of poll after poll, showing UKIP well ahead of the Lib Dems in the fight for one of the minor places in the next Parliament. At last Nick was told Santa would see him. So he asked, "I don't want to ask for much for myself this Christmas, Santa. I would just like to make sure the British people understand how difficult it has been for my party in this coalition. You know, we Lib Dems are not the sort of people who believe in cutting welfare or other spending. We do not like having to keep public sector pay and pensions down. We'd be far happier imposing new taxes on the rich, but the Tories wouldn't let us do these things. We only went along with all of this because we thought it was grown up and responsible to help form a government. But it would be very unfair if people thought we were to blame for anything which they thought was wrong." Santa appeared dismissive as he came to reply. "I cannot possibly give you such a valuable present. Of course, all political leaders would dearly love to be absolved of all blame for what they and their parties have done. But the whole point of democracy is they have to stand or fall by what they did. It certainly helps them if what they did squares with what they said, but that is all too rare these days. It was your Dr. Cable that put through the unpopular tuition fees when you had all promised the opposite in the election. It was your Mr. Davy who pressed on with dear energy, making it difficult for families to pay their power bills. It was you yourself who wasted so much time on constitutional changes which the public did not want. Your whole party said they would help get the deficit down. Now they all want to distance themselves from any of those difficult decisions. Think again, Mr. Clegg, about a present appropriate to your straitened circumstances. Ed arrived just as Nick was being shown the door by Santa's helpers. They exchanged a nervous hello as Ed checked to make sure he really was next. In the grotto, Ed said, "Thanks for seeing me today, Santa. I've had a rough few weeks, what with a difficult visit to Scotland, and then that photo of all those English flags, and then someone leaking our intentions for the election. I just want you to know we're a good lot, really. We just want to get back into power so we can make everything just right, with some proper public spending. So the present's not really for me, it's for the public. You see, I would like my Christmas present this year to be having a go as Prime Minister. Can you fix it for me?" Santa looked grave. He replied, "I do not fix things for people. That idea came to a sticky end. I have to decide what presents to bring people. They can ask me for their favourites, but it is not always right or possible to give them exactly what they want. I don't suppose you will be the only one this Christmas who wants to be Prime Minister. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's certainly not going to be easy. It would help me if you would ask for a more realistic present which I could guarantee to give you." Ed stumbled. "Well, let's say Dave wants to be it again. Is it fair that he should have two goes when I don't get one? You see, they'll get rid of me if I don't get the PM job." "Well," said Santa, "you've been very lucky so far. Not so long ago, you asked for the same Christmas present as your brother, to be leader of the Labour Party, and I gave it to you. Just last year, you privately told me the absolute must for your Christmas was to have a no vote in Scotland, which you got. I can tell you that upset some others who wanted the very opposite. You can't expect to win the best present every year. Now you tell me you're ready to be Prime Minister and want to spend some more money. Yet you're also telling everyone you will get the deficit down. I don't see how that works. Your tax rises will bring in peanuts at best and may even lose you revenue. So I say, go home and think again. If there is something else less contentious you want, then by all means drop me a line." A little while after Ed had left, the Prime Minister turned up. "I'm not late, Santa, am I?" asked Dave. Before he got an answer, he went on, "You see, there was another of those dreadful meetings about Europe which just went on, and I wasn't allowed to leave. I did tell Mrs. Merkel it was important to be here with you, but she seemed to think EU regulations on derivatives were more important. I did tell her that all this banging on about Europe is not a good idea, but she keeps doing it and sending me the bills." He flowed on perfectly with Santa speechless. "What I want for Christmas, Santa, is the continued delivery of my long-term economic plan. More jobs, more growth. You know what George is up to. It's all clever stuff. That means I just have to be PM for a bit longer. Nothing personal. Difficult job. Gets in the way of the family a bit. I'm sure you will see it's a simple choice, and I'm afraid it just has to be me again to get us through to those sunlit uplands." Santa decided he did not need more explanation of the long-term economic plan. He interrupted and said, "I've given you your preferred present every year for the last 5 years. You've been Prime Minister. You've kept a coalition government going. You've got your economic recovery and all those jobs you insisted on. Your critics didn't want you to have those, you know. You've seen off the challengers for your job. Last year you asked to win the referendum on Scotland, which I gave you too. Fortunately, more than one of you wanted that, so it was a very cheap present from my point of view. This year you're asking for something that others also want, but only one can have. That's very difficult for me. Isn't there something else you'd rather be sure of having? How about a really good international job on a much bigger salary?" "No," said Dave, "that won't do, I'm afraid. I've made them all a promise. I don't think they can manage without me yet. I never like to let people down. "Well, I'm very pleased to hear that," said Santa. "So how are you getting on with getting immigration down to tens of thousands, and how's that deficit coming along? I've had a very difficult day. I will let you know later what I propose to do." Santa was getting over Ed and Dave's performances, so he sat down and weighed it all up. He had to think about staying popular himself. How he hated having to decide what presents to give the politicians, when they all made such a mess of being friendly to enough people. Why this year was there no clear winner with a majority of votes in the polls? Last year had been easy looking back. Nigel wanted to win the European elections, but none of the others bothered to ask for that, so he got what he wanted. Nick, Dave and Ed all wanted the same thing, a yes vote in Scotland. Alex was none too happy, but he did get the present he used to ask for, more devolution. So in a way, they all got what they wanted. This year, they all seemed to want the same thing, but only one could have it. Santa could see no way out. Back any party leader for Prime Minister, and he would alienate more than 2/3 of the country on current party polling. Back Nicola or Nigel having strong influence over a new government, and again he would annoy far, far more people than he satisfied. In an age of Facebook and Twitter, Santa ruminated that one false present and his brand could be instantly damaged in an orgy of tweets or electronic comments. So here is what Santa decided to do. He wrote back to all the leaders and said they might like to reconsider their present requests. They should understand how limited their current popularity is and ask for things that the public would accept. He was not saying Dave or even Ed were wrong to ask to be PM, but would they just check with the public mood, as the winner had to show enough support. In the meantime, the answer to Santa's conundrum was to give no one of them presents this Christmas. Far from coming early, as Nicola hoped, Christmas for politicians this year is being postponed. In May, Santa will reconsider when he sees how the public think about it all. As far as Santa is concerned, giving no presents to any political leader on December the 25th is a win-win. After all, the polls that matter to Santa are the ones showing how popular he is. He mustn't damage his eternal brand with a rash decision.
Brilliant.